Hello, everyone, and welcome to enVision Together, going to our next level of best. I am very happy to bring to you today Robert Wolf, who has wonderful stories, important stories to share about himself, his family, his background, and a lot of more information. But with that, as usual, we'll go ahead and have him introduce himself in his own way.
Well, hi, Pam. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate you taking your time on a Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon to have me on your program. Much
Absolutely.
appreciated. And well, my name is Rob Wolf, as you said. I'm a doctor and I'm also an author. We can get to that in a minute. But I was born in Detroit. My parents are from Hungary. They were immigrants, so I'm first generation American. Born in Detroit, Michigan. Raised in a small suburb of Detroit called Mount Clemens. Famous for sulfur baths and Thomas Alva Edison back in the day. So
Ah,
a little stopping ground for Thomas Alva Edison. Now it's a nice little town. It's an elderly town. The high school's almost closed down. I went there till 12th grade. I also took piano lessons as a kid. If you want to throw that in there, I
oh,
did.
wow.
Yeah, and 8 years, 9 years of piano lessons from third to 11th grade. Fantastic. I was bar
Okay.
mitzvahed in Mount Clemens. Our synagogue was about a mile from my house. It's the only synagogue in our county on the east side of Detroit. More Jewish people on the west side of Detroit, and obviously in college towns and elsewhere. Now there was about 100 families, 100 Jewish families in my county growing up, and now there's just a handful. It's really,
Oh,
but there's still quite a few Jewish people in the Detroit area, just not our side of it. So
that's
they redid the synagogue in 1975. I was one of the last bar mitzvah in our original synagogue that was built in 1909, way before my parents even came here to the United States. So I was one of three Jewish kids in my high school. My high school is about 40% African American. It was a small subset of Detroit, which was at the time probably about 60% after African American. So I grew up in a little bit of a different environment than a lot of people. Great town to grow up in. I played four sports. I had letters and had 9 letters in four sports. Hard to believe. Graduated salutatorian. Lucky me. Got a few ounces of brain in me, and it helped launch me farther along. Lucky to have good parents. That helps too. Nothing like if you don't have a good family, you really have nothing. So
that's
it helps to have good family support systems and that kind of thing. People to believe in education.
mhm,
So lucky enough to go to Tufts University in the Boston area.
mhm.
Completely different group of people. Really mixed bag of people. Fantastic place to go to college. Then fortunate enough to get into University Medical School, University of Michigan Medical School, back to my home states, and now here's my starting to bounce around now for the next 30 years. And then I did
Is
my
that another
internship.
like shocker group of people?
No, it's a yeah, different medical school is interesting. We had older students. We had students that had different careers like banking, teaching, acting. So we had all
Okay.
master's degrees in certain subjects, and then people that just went straight through. We had MD, PhDs. We had Jewish. We had African American. We had Asian. We had twins. We had 3 sets of twins in my class at
Wow.
Michigan, which was kind of cool. I remember a lot of it like yesterday, and some of it, yeah, you just forget. I mean, it's so long ago now. I've been a doctor now for, I just had my 35th, no, yeah, 36th anniversary of graduating from University of Michigan Medical School. So I don't know
Wow.
where the time's gone, but there it is. So, and then
Okay.
I trained in New England. So I bounced half my life. I've lived in Michigan, half my life I've lived in New England, and I've been here in Southern Florida now for 5 years and counting. So I trained at a Boston University affiliate, Framingham Union Hospital, suburban Boston. And then I did my radiology residency at Brown, and I did a neuroradiology residency or fellowship at Yale. So now I'm 30 years old, and my indentured servitude is right, and my indentured servitude time is finally over. So get my first job in Massachusetts, and long story. Then back to Michigan, then back to Rhode Island, Massachusetts. So I've been bounced back and forth a few times, but no regrets. I wouldn't change a thing. I've had a pretty good career. I've been part time now since age 43. I'm now 61. So I've been part time for a long time, and that's kind of kept me in the ball game. And what else? I like sports. I like music. I like jazz. I like fusion. I like rock and roll. Some classical, although not as much as my parents did, but that's what they were raised with back in the day.
Mhm,
And they love jazz too. They love music, so I've got that love of music from them.
mhm,
Plus the arts and theater. And
mhm,
my parents, for coming over first generation, out of Hungary, learning the language.
Mm.
My dad was a doctor, so that's the punchline. He was an OBGYN, and he delivered over 10,000 babies in the Detroit area in a shortened career. That probably includes the number of babies he delivered when he was in Boston to redo his residency, and when he was in Hungary, when he finally got to go back to medical school after World War II. So the book talks a little bit about that, how Jews couldn't go to school, high school, let alone medical school. But so many people were killed in World War II that there was a quota that up to 10% of Jewish people, up to the 10% of the class could be Jewish people because they were so short of physicians. So my dad was fortunate enough to be able to go to medical school, but big delays after everything they went through. So what else? I'm interested in history. This book and everything I've been doing now the last 6 years is new to me. If you knew me 6 years ago, you'd say, this guy would never be doing what he's doing now, fighting racism, fighting anti-Semitism, and sharing a story that's just so unbelievable that I couldn't let it just sit on a disc.
Right.
And that's we talk about the history of the book in a little bit too, but
Yeah.
that's kind of me. I've been married. I've got great kids and grandkids. They're actually two stepdaughters in their 40s and three great step grandkids. They all support the book, and they all have been. Well, two of them have been to the Holocaust Museum where the book is on sale, one of the places, and sent pictures back with them holding the book and telling them how they talk to the staff, and really touching. That kind of thing really makes your month. And then a few months later, I'm over at the Holocaust Museum in DC myself doing a book signing, and I thank them, and they've already invited me to come back, which is it's really an honor just to be invited there. First of all, to have your book on the shelves there is a true honor, but then to have you invited and then re-invite you for another time, it's just amazing. So I have a pretty good run with that, and I still practice medicine. I'm part-time, 2 days a week, Wednesdays and Thursdays. I read out of Michigan, outpatient only, just some X-rays and ultrasound. And I would rather be. I mean, I'm full-time book, but I'd rather be all book and not. But it kind of keeps me in the game, keeps me from being bored. And
right,
I'm 60.
I can relate to what you said. If you asked me even 6 years ago if I'd be doing a podcast, I would have said absolutely not.
I didn't know what a podcast was 6 years ago. I didn't know what a platform was. I didn't know what a book coach was. I thought a book coach was the guy on the side, dressed like like Tom Landry in a suit and coaching the Dallas Cowboys or something. And a platform, I always thought of diving, like the Olympic diving, because I was a swimmer in high school. I couldn't dive, but I was a swimmer. But I always thought of all these words and terms, podcast and pod match and blogs and all these terms. It's and podcasts are hard work. I mean, I've talked to hosts about doing podcasts. It's a lot of work. You have to edit. You got to arrange the schedule. You've got to work around your schedule and the guest schedule.
It's a lot of work, but it's also great fun. It's really fulfilling too, because I'm providing content and information to an audience, but in the process of doing so, I'm getting all that information too. So it's like I'm a conduit, and I get wet in the process of taking water to people for imagery.
That's a great way of putting. I like that. I like that analogy. The old Roman conduits. They were famous for the right the underground conduits.
Yeah. Well, you have a really full, vast experience, and that always makes for a unique conversation. So let's jump right in. During a previous conversation, you shared with me that when you were younger, you didn't fully appreciate your parents' Holocaust experience. Why didn't you? And then what changed?
Well, that's such a great question, and I probably answer it kind of the same and kind of differently every time. Mm-hmm. First of all, you're a dumb kid. You're a dumb, spoiled kid growing up in the United States. The most important thing is being able to meet your girlfriend after school or after your sports or whatever, and going to McDonald's or whatever. That's kind of K through 12, right? And then I had my career, and I was busy and with work, medical school. When I say like 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, 6 years of residency, we talk about it in a matter of seconds, but it's a lot of sweat. I mean, there's a lot of time that you're busy in the hospital, you're busy in the library, at home studying, whatever, and then you raise a family. So there's the kind of thing that and like anti-Semitism, for example, it didn't affect me at the time because, like I said, I was one of 3 Jews in my high school, but if I ever got picked on, it was because I was a little kid, like in 9th grade. That's kind of the last time I got picked on because we're just kids, 7th grade and 9th grade. After that, when you earn respect, when people learn who you are, then they admire you and you have a mutual respect, and then you don't get picked on, no matter what your religion or your color or your race, whatever. It's just it is what it is. You leave it on the field. So yeah, so I never care. I really didn't care. I mean, and my mom talked about it all the time. She was a Holocaust educator. My dad was too. Maybe I got a little burnout from it, a little bit Holocaust fatigue, they call it. And I didn't really think much of it. But my mom and dad wrote my dad's autobiography in the 70s. And they went from paper and pencil to typewriter to a computer to a disc. I read the manuscript once, probably 20, 30 years ago when I was really, really busy. Didn't think much of it, except I remember my dad's first escape. He had four of them, but I remembered the first one vividly, and just for years. So flash forward to so my dad passed in 1997, unfortunately, and then my mom in 2016, unfortunately. And the older she got, the more she reflected on history, the more she used to teach about the Holocaust, and my family would be interested in it, and friends and her friends. But I was hearing it all the time, and so I just got a little burnt. I shut some of it down, but I remembered a lot of what she said, but didn't appreciate it like I should have. I mean, it's always too late. But either way, it's actually never too late. I mean, I'm going to contradict myself because it's never too late to do the right thing. So even after your parents are gone, so mom dies in 2016, unfortunately. A historian friend hands me my dad's story, which is now on a disc. And I was busy with my mom's affairs for about another year, so I didn't think much of it. But she said to me, "You've got to read this." And then I retired for a year, 2017. 2018, a friend of mine says, "Do you want to come work for me a little bit?" And not come working, but because I'm working from home out of Michigan, like I said. And that's what I've been doing since 2018, is just doing part-time radiology, X-ray, and ultrasound. But that brought me to the disc. So the disc sort of summoned me, in a corny way, like Superman's kryptonite. So that's the best analogy I can come up. It just summoned me. So I loaded the disc into the computer, and as a radiologist, we have two screens. One on the left is the patient list, and on the right is are the images. And between cases, what I was doing was my dad's autobiography on the left, and my version, turning it into a biography, on the right. My parents were very sharp. They wrote the stories as though they'd happened the previous day. The smells, the sounds, the specifics of how the table was set, the music, the scenery, everything, the hard times, and even the descriptions of what his parents went through at Auschwitz and what my dad went through at forced labor camps. So, and then I read it and thought, oh my God, this is unbelievable. Miracle after miracle after miracle, escape after escape, brutal people, friendly people, twists and turns, cloak and dagger stories, friends that you would think were your friends would be your enemies, people that you thought would be your enemies turn out to be your friends. So many, it was so unbelievable that I couldn't let it sit on a piece of plastic or sitting in a computer. So I did.
Well, just listening to you, it is packed with so much good stuff for storytelling, but this was actually what they lived out.
This is
and
what they
love
lived out.
that you shared how it's so packed with sensory detail. So it really makes it come alive. And because they lived it, it's like, wow, this is really what it was like.
It's, and so many readers say that to me. And this is what got me too, is that I put myself in my dad's footsteps. Like it wasn't just the sights and the sounds and all the detail and all the miracles, but you could feel you were in my dad's footsteps. Once you got going, and you realize, like his first escape, for example, or when he was in the forced labor camp, you can picture it in your mind's eye. You can actually see yourself there and become him. And that's kind of what happened to me. And it gave me the zap. And a lot of people that have read it said the same thing. And the background, the backdrop of anti-Semitism and racism is clear throughout the book, throughout the story, as is integrity, as is miracles, and I'd like to say the hand of God to help him out. But all of that is in the backdrop, and you feel it, and that's what's really enticing about the book. And not only just the thriller stories, but also all the messages, integrity and determination and hope, and not love. Hatred, on and on. I mean, there's so many messages.
So let me back up just a little bit to give the audience some deeper context into who you are and what's given shape to who you are today. Tell us about a childhood pain point in your life that may have helped give shape to who you are today and your passion to share with the world your parents' Holocaust experience. You told me previously that about not truly fitting in. Can you tell us what that dynamic was like for you?
Well, I was an only child of only children, and so both my parents being only children, sometimes it is hard to fit in. Although I did have a lot of friends by the time I finished high school and college, and med school, but it takes time. I mean, that there's yeah, you don't fit in. You know what it was like. Well, you work with seventh, eighth, ninth graders, I guess. So that age group is really tough, where kids are trying to find their identity. So I never really felt fit in until probably about 10th grade, 11th grade, when you finally, you know, and that's. But in the meantime, you know, you still have your set of friends. It just, you may not be the most popular kid in class, but you do meet friends, and you've got to live by the golden rule. If you want people to respect you, if you want people to be your friends, then you have to give respect too. You have to show kindness, you have to show caring, and the love. And that, you know, yeah, I got that from my parents, that they were very tolerant of people of all races and creeds. They were so interested in other people. Traveling was a big hobby too. They love to travel, and you know, travel can be very isolating, but it can be very engaging too. So, and that's how my mom and dad were. They had friends all over the world, from India and Africa, Asia, on and
You
on. So
mentioned something about being in some settings not Jewish enough, and in other settings too Jewish.
that's a great question. More my dad. We talk about that in the book. That my dad and their parents were worried for their safety. For one thing, with anti-Semitism in the rise, they didn't know whether to live in Hungary or Transylvania, Romania. The maps changed so much; you needed a program to keep up with it. So, but they were loyal to native Mother Hungary, and so they decided they wanted to live in Hungary. And then they had to move around different. Their hometown was Győr, a small industrial town in northwest Hungary, and they had to shuffle around there because in one case they were in the Orthodox section, but my parents weren't Orthodox. They were conservative, we'll say. Dad was an OBGYN, so he was in the hospital all the time. He had to work on Sabbath, Shabbat, you know, this is part of the job.
Right.
But his parents, they didn't know where to live. They didn't feel, they felt shunned by the Orthodox. So, and I get that. I mean, it's a different culture. You know, it's hit or miss. I wish it weren't like that sometimes. My dad felt that in the forced labor camp too, by the way, this dichotomy of the Orthodox versus non-Orthodox, where you're all in the same boat. Big message there, big lesson there. We can talk about that too. But, and I kind of said enough to, did you get the point? But needless to say, plus money was an issue for my dad's parents. So
So
they had a
is
hard
there
time.
a type of discrimination even within the culture?
There can be. There can be. I mean, I'm learning it very sadly now in the United States that there's Jewish people there are Jewish people out there that are they are not they're not the Jewish people that I know. I mean, they're not. They may not be supporting Israel, or they're supporting the terrorists. They're supporting. You know, I think back to
You know,
Bush,
it's
and you know, it's really
interesting.
sad.
Hmm.
It's sad. I mean, I'd expect it from white supremacists or skinheads or people that have been raised to hate not just Jewish people, but Muslims, African Americans, Hispanic. You know what I'm talking. You know, and those are those people. And then Hamas, for example, or the jihadists. It's either Muslim or you're out. And even women in many countries are still treated like second-class citizens. So you know, you can throw sexism in there too. So I was not trained that way. I wasn't raised that way. My parents weren't raised that way, and they always seemed to fight it off. After everything my parents went through, you'd think they would have PTSD. You would think they would want to not talk about it, and a lot of people don't. You know, you hear all these Vietnam vet stories, et cetera, et cetera. But my parents were just the opposite. That was their fight back, is to educate people about the way the world is, how good we
That's a
have it here,
wonderful
and the way
approach.
the dark world was. And as it turns out, it's sort of on the resurgence, unfortunately. You know,
Hmm.
I would never think it's not even 100 years since the stories in my book, and we're already going through this again.
Yeah.
And it's not just now. You know, if you think about 911, these kids protesting, for example, 911, some of them deny 911. Some of them weren't even born yet when 911 happened. But 911 was American targets.
Hmm.
Jewish people died, Christian people died, Muslims, Asians. It
Hmm.
was a fight against America, and we haven't been that cohesive since then, since 911. To me, October 7th was a real disruptor. Then when we think about the in between, we had the
I do agree
coronavirus.
that a lot of division has surfaced in our society in recent years, recent, I don't know, decade or so.
I'm trying to fight that. I mean, I mean, my own little corner of it with the book and the fight against anti-Semitism. But you get my point. It's all of it.
Mhm.
You know, the
But I just
COVID.
want to say that there's factions in every culture where people, even within the culture, have some kind of discrimination against each other. That's in the black
It's not
race, that's
good.
in the Hispanic race. I think it's just the human race.
It's very sad.
Sadly.
It's very sad to see, because humans are humans. And you know, I'm gonna refer to my dad on this one too. My dad would call out Jewish people that committed malfeasance. He would, you know, he wouldn't just say, he wouldn't just say, "Oh, it's a Jew, it's Epstein or something, or it's Rothstein, so he's got to be okay." No, my dad, and this is I've heard this from many African American professional athletes and even musicians, people in the NBA,
Mhm.
that you're taught that you're so bad, you're taught that you're so beneath the other person that you have to overcompensate. And your
Mhm.
parents tell you that too. I've heard that from Isaiah Thomas. I've heard it from, but my dad felt that. I felt that with my
I
dad. He
mean,
would
I was that way too.
but on the other hand, but you still have to defend, you still have to defend the right to live,
Yeah.
defend legal rights, which there were no legal rights back in Nazi Hungary and communist Hungary. There were no lawyers or cell phones. The victims, there were no TikToks. The victims were the witnesses were the next victims. I mean, that's how it was. So,
Right.
but you know what I'm saying, and
Yeah.
it's really sad. I mean, I'm not. I've got a lot of black friends. I've got a lot of Asian friends. I've got Jewish. I got Muslim. I did a book talk in Arizona, in Phoenix area last year,
Mhm.
sponsored by a Greek Orthodox church.
Mhm.
One of my best friends from ninth grade. He's the priest there,
Mhm.
so he sponsors a book talk there. Kids, adults, big families,
Mhm.
well received. We sold out all the books. My assistant was one of my best friends from my freshman year in college, a Muslim, Zaki Khan,
Mhm.
excellent squash player, is a squash pro. So he's my assistant. We have the only Jewish kid and this Muslim kid in all Greek Orthodox Christian church doing a book talk about stuff that happened 60, 80 years ago,
That's
but still
beautiful.
resonates today. So, and believe me, I need my Christian brethren as much as there's only 17 million or 16 million Jewish people in the world. So
Mhm.
I can't fight anti-Semitism and racism alone. I need help from and even Muslims that are most Muslims are moderate. Most Muslims do not want this. They do not want war.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's one or two people that ruin it for everybody. I know, Osama bin Laden, Adolf Hitler, Pol Pot,
Mhm.
Fidel Castro. It's always one guy that ruins it for everybody, and that's the sad thing because I don't need to appeal to most people, but I just want people to wake up to
Yeah.
realize that if we're not careful, we could all be on the run like my dad was, and the things that happened to my parents and my dad could happen to any one of us, and it
Right.
could be a bad business
I mean, at the
deal, a
end of
bad
the
government.
day, we just want to all love each other and get along.
It's hard. I mean, I like
It is
you're,
hard.
you're
It
training kids.
sounds
You're training kids. Kids bully each other, and I imagine it in Riverside, in suburban California. You've got a mixed bag of kids. I'm sure you've got the Asian, the
right.
Latino, the African American, and they have gangs and they have their groups and their cliques and they bully each
Absolutely.
other. Got to be hard for you to do that at that
But
age.
I'm just saying
They're not mature. They're not mature.
the hope is
Go ahead.
we all just the goal of what you're doing and what I'm doing. And I think I want to think the majority of us are hoping for is that we all get along. And yeah, that's a daunting task to have as reality.
It is. But
But
here we are.
you did tell me um, about four escapes, miracles that your parents experienced during Holocaust. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to first tell you about the one he missed. My dad actually missed an escape under communist Hungary. He had enough of the communists, even though he was in medical school, and I mean he wanted to finish his career as a doctor, but he also wanted to be free. He didn't want to be in a communist country. He missed an escape. So this is in the middle of the other four. It's sandwiched in the middle. So we'll just say that he went to the wrong train station. And he thought he was the world's unluckiest guy, but everyone who made the right train and the right train station got arrested by the Soviets, by the communists, including my dad's medical school roommate. So
Oh,
that's a miracle in itself. He missed the
oh,
escape, and because of that, he didn't get arrested. He
wow.
nobody even knew what his intentions were. His first of four escapes, he was in a forced labor camp with his friend Frank. They thought the war was coming to an end, so they heard by the grapevine. By the way, no news. You're in the middle of nowhere in the foothill, the Caspian Mountains. No communication, no newspapers, no radios. So you only hear word of mouth. And by the last couple of months of the war, things were shut off because the Nazis were killing Jewish people so fast in Hungary that parents and any relatives that were still left went away. So, which is sad. But my dad and his friend Frank decided that the one march that they were on was a death march. My dad was fortunate enough to actually not for he had a foot infection, so he was taken to a hospital. So he was away when they started this march, but he rejoined his troops. And by the way, he had to walk on a bad foot all the way to the hospital, all the way back to his troops, all the way to the marching group, and on a bad foot, his first escape, which was a full run. Let's go. boom, off the line. They decided what day to do it. They decided when. Nice and quiet on the count of three. They took off right at dusk, and what a chase! They got away. But here's the thing: where are you running to? Or when they're caught in a thicket, worried about getting eaten by wolves or bears and getting a prickles, pricks from the thorns and freezing to death and scared to death. My
And
dad
all
thinks,
along with a hurt
what,
foot.
what have I done? What have I done? And a third guy tried to escape with them. So I'm really telling more than I should. He got caught. And let's just say they could hear what they were doing to the guy.
Oh,
And can you imagine how scary that is? Like, I'm next,
oh my
but
goodness.
they got away. So, and then the second one was, it was actually in downtown Budapest. They were right in front of Nazi headquarters, and amazing, the timing, the strategy, and the luck, or as I like to say, the hand of God. So that was the second escape under Nazi Hungary. And then they were, when you say free, free is a relative word because you have no home. You don't know where your next meal is coming from. You can't find a job. You're going house to house. Sometimes nice people put them up but they could only put them up for 2 days, a day or two or three or a week. And putting their own lives at risk, protecting Jewish people. That was punishable by death for anybody that helped them, and many people did help them. So hiding places, the weird hiding places you expect, and then third escape. He was a med student, so finally got back into medical school. It was like a Friday night, I want to say, and he just had enough, and he decided he was going to go to the Austrian border, and he made up this story, arguing with an armed Russian soldier about how he's supposed to go to Austria and fix an X-ray machine. Ironically, he's not even. I'm a radiologist. It's so funny, and he kind of BS his way through it. It's like
Wow.
trying to buy liquor at the liquor store with a fake ID when you're under 21. It's kind of you challenge them, and he offered the soldier, who probably didn't speak much of the language. He said, go ahead and call the hospital, see what they see how happy they'll be. And he got through. The guy let him through, but my dad was so nervous about fear of reprisal from the communist governments if they were to catch him, that he turned around and went back to his medical school, and then he was on call the next night. My co-author calls that a failed escape. I call it a successful escape. He went back on his own. I mean, he probably could have escaped and gone
But
further
what
into Austria
courage
and got
even
out.
to do that.
But yeah, he changed his mind. He was so scared then. And
Hmm.
finally, the fourth and final escape was with my mom. And it was after the Hungarian Revolution in 1956, which not a lot of people know about. 3,000 people died. There was a 2.5 week war. I call the Ukraine war now the Hungarian Revolution on steroids because it's been going on and on. It's about 2 years now, if I'm not mistaken. It's just ridiculous. I'd say thank God it didn't happen in Hungary, but it's sad that it did happen in Hungary, but at least it was a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
But when the war in Ukraine first came out, people were comparing the two, saying that they were very similar. So mom and dad were frontliners. Mom was a medical student at the time. She ran the blood bank in Budapest. There were countless injuries, a lot of young kids, a lot of young adults and kids that were part of the revolution that got either killed or injured, a lot of refugees. And dad had to double down as he was an OBGYN already by now, but he had to double down as a trauma surgeon because, they cross-trained back in the day. So he was working 24/7 for about 2.5 weeks. I mean, doing trauma during the day or at night, and his OBGYN duties, delivering babies, really, really difficult. So after that, they had enough. I mean, 2 wars. The communists were no better to the Jews than the Nazis, short of corralling them into ghettos and hauling them off in trains to kill them. I mean, Jewish weddings were not legal. We have a chapter about that. My parents did a Jewish wedding anyway, and the sponsor was my mom's uncle, also a doctor, and he was taken away for 13 months and tortured and questioned. And
So
they
you
tried.
come from a long line of doctors.
Yeah, my dad's father, who killed at Auschwitz, along with my dad's mother, he was a dentist, and he was a doctor and dentist. It was more of a blend back then. Now we have all these subspecialties, as you know. Even dentistry has all its subspecialties as well. But no, he was a dentist and he was a doctor on a Red Cross ship in World War I on the Black Sea. So he was a captain. He was a dentist. They used to give free dental work for some of the less fortunate in my dad's hometown. Free dental work for some of the guards in my dad's forced labor camp, which was kind of a form of bribery. But he gave a lot of freebies. They were good with their community. They were hardworking, nice people, and we talk about that in the book. We make it more personal, like you said, and that's what's important. That they're not just one of 6 million Jews. It's actually more than that, or 50 million people that died in World War II. Which, not to mention the revolutions and under communist rule, people that died that we don't even know what happened to them. Imre Nagy, for example, for the leader of the revolution, goes away. We don't know what happened to him. I mean, we assume he was executed, but tortured probably first and then executed. But you know what I'm saying. We don't.
Right.
The dark continent, the Iron Curtain was just that. It was iron, and you couldn't see through. You know, you just couldn't. I mean,
So you mentioned previously that what happened to your dad could happen to anyone. Things can change on a dime. Elaborate on that a little bit more. I mean, I have an idea of what you're saying there, but tell us more so that we get a
well,
clear
he was
message.
just Jewish. I mean, my dad was just Jewish, and you know, he wanted to go to medical school. He was a smart guy. He was a straight A student. He didn't do anything wrong. He just wanted to study, become a doctor, and his dad the same thing. But because of this hatred, because of this the rise of the anti-Semitism and the racism, you know, suddenly people are getting killed. People are slaves. They're taking the guns away. They're taking the radios away. They weren't allowed to listen to the radio even. So, and just picturing him being put in a forced labor camp. Well, you know, we still have hostages. I mean, the Ukraine war is a great example too. I mean, not hostages, but people still dying, civilians and otherwise. And same with Israel, we still have hostages there. So, my dad was in a forced labor camp, and fortunately, he was useful. You know, I mean, he was useful because he was a young man, and they could put him to work. Otherwise, they would have killed him too. You know, the infirmed and the disabled, and you know, homosexuals and priests and rabbis, they were just killed instantly. They didn't, you know, there was no mercy there. So what I say is, if it could be a natural disaster, like an earthquake or tornado, something that can render you homeless or jobless, a bad neighbor, a bad business deal, a big lawsuit, a bad, you know, local government, bad federal government, bad foreign government. There, things can change, the rules can change on a dime, and then all of a sudden you find yourself without a job, like my dad's father turned away. He had to fire somebody because he was Jewish. You know, my dad got kicked off the swim team because he was Jewish. So, you know, you from your past too, from the African American past, like we go back to the '60s when all the riots happened, '60s and '70s, and even in the LA area, not that what was it, the '90s, the riots in the '90s. You know, that was some of it was race riots, some of it wasn't.
Yeah.
But it's you know, it's just it can happen like overnight. I mean, why do people start rioting? Some of it's poverty, some of it's desperation, some of it's hatred, some of it's you know, the fight for land, like in Israel, whatever the case may be. So, but yes, it made once I read what happened to my dad, yeah, that could be me. I put myself in his place in a
And
heartbeat. And
I think that's an important thing to point out to people, and even just for the sake of empathy, challenging people to actually put themselves in that situation, imagine what it would be like to care about people who've been through things like that, people who are experiencing things like that even now. And I think even just in the last couple of years, we've seen how things can change on a dime. For example, just a couple of years ago, Asian people, people from China specifically, because of COVID, they felt targeted. Um,
I was going to say, I'm glad you brought that point because I was trying to say that when I talk about 9/11, because it's the ignorant people, it's the uneducated that are targeting indiscriminately the Asian people following COVID. And I'm not going to say it's because Trump called it the China virus, which is his own ignorance. It started in China, and that was just his name for it, but it's nothing inherently prejudicial about him saying that. He's just saying it's a China virus. He's not using any derogatory names like Archie Bunker used to, but people are blaming the Jews for October 7th, and people blamed the Muslims. Remember, there was the Islamophobia after 9/11, and it was indiscriminate. It was,
right.
and it's not right because
I'm just saying these are examples, yeah, of how things can change on a dime, and you wouldn't think that you would be facing or fearing for your safety, and just something can happen in the world, and all of
it's
a
sad.
sudden you have a target on your back. So
I
it's
was
something
saddened.
it would
Yeah,
be
no,
wise for all of us to consider this, and then consider how we can become a part of the solution and not be the type of person who just turns on each other because of whatever we perceive. Um,
it's a great way of putting it. Be part of the solution. Accountability. That's the word. Don't, if you're bored or if you want a scapegoat, then there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with your life.
right.
You know, you should be proud of what you're doing. And if you don't like what you're doing, do something else. You know, I'm saying, like for me, this book is doing something else. Everybody can do something, you know, write a book, write a play, go to the opera, go travel somewhere, do something, you know, get a new job, volunteer somewhere, you know, do some charity work, do something useful. Don't
Right.
make me a scapegoat when I've been working hard, and my friends and family, we work hard. We care about our families. We care about putting food on the table. But in my case, there's more than just food, shelter, and clothing. There's other things like caring about other people. And you're right, you bring up a good point when you say if things don't affect you, you're less apt to be empathetic towards it. So there were a lot of Christians and Jews that helped my parents back in the day, but there were some people that they were afraid of their own lives. They felt threatened, or and it's scary. And I mean,
And all of that is part of it too. But it's just, I just think it's good food for thought, and that's why I wanted to bring that up during this talk for us all to just pause and consider, empathize, and again, how can we be a part of the solution rather than adding to it, adding fuel to the fire? But you also told me that in the midst of what your parents faced, they didn't have PTSD as a result of their trials. To what do you attribute this, and how can we learn from your parents?
That's such a great question. I don't know how I could, I don't know how I could survive that and not have PTSD. Self-discipline, the way they were raised, stern, the way they were raised, stern, discipline, strong-willed, strong mind, just that desire to be a doctor, desire to do something productive in my dad's case. And with my mom, it was about educating about the whole thing, opening up about it, trying to teach people what happened, how to avoid it happening again, how not to be sheep and not just lay down. So a combination of things. It's tough, though. And most Americans, like, I can't speak for most Americans, but I can't imagine how the way we live our lives. We get mad when we're waiting in the McDonald's line for more than 10 minutes, or the Dunkin' Donuts line, right? So can you imagine like standing in line under guard without being armed and being told what to do and threatened every day and beaten?
We're talking. I'm sorry. We're talking about a very serious topic, but a kind of humorous thing popped into my mind as far as oftentimes in my family, we'll say, this generation, even our generation, we're not made of the same stuff as my grandmother, my grandfather. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the target. Each generation, I think we lose a degree of grit. We expect so much. We're entitled for so much, especially, I am going to say it, being born and raised in America, we do have rose-colored shades on to a certain extent. We don't even understand that oftentimes, now I'm not trying to belittle poverty because I've been poor, like really poor in my lifetime. But poverty in America oftentimes looks a little bit different from poverty in other countries. And we can be on welfare and live in the welfare housing, but even those apartments are better than middle class, some upper class apartments in other countries. We don't have the same perspective. And again, I'm not trying to belittle anyone's experience because everything is relative. But at the same time, I do think we need to thicken our skin and get a little more grit. I think our society are turning us into cream puffs.
Great way of putting it. I'm sorry. I just don't want to lose my thought. Entitlement is a great word that I use all the time because I see it down here. I mean, here in Southern Florida, there are many people that are poor and homeless, and it's very saddening to me. It's another, I wish I could solve all the world's problems because right now, to me, right now I'm fighting anti-Semitism, but that's a problem I'd like to try to help tackle someday down the road, short of building huge homes, which, I don't have that kind of money to do, but entitlement is a big thing in this country. And, and the softness, I mean, our military is still tough. If you're in the military, if you go to med school, if you're a cop, if you're a first responder, you're tough. I mean, you're tough. Those are not easy jobs. Nursing, there are a lot of jobs here in the United States. There's a lot of work that people are doing that's tough. And that I'll give, but things that are softening up, like the McDonald's, we talk about the McDonald's and donuts, for example, drive-throughs, people having to work more just to feed their kids. So they're sitting down more, they're delivering on trucks. So they're sitting all day, even though that's exercise, UPS, but you're still sitting, that kind of thing. And also the electronic era, we're more tuned into our social media, our electronics, our forms of entertainment. So we're less apt to go out and play sports and things like that. I mean, I'm going to get soft
the microwave generation, but I think we've gone even past that. I
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
just a few years ago, I was in a line at McDonald's and a person was so impatient, they were honking the horn saying, fast food, let's go.
No surprise there. No surprise there. So
So I don't know.
there was just a guy at a McDonald's with a machete in New York City. I'm hearing that story, which is really I don't know where a guy would get a machete or why you'd be wielding a machete in the middle of Manhattan. A little scary to me. You know, you're on the subway and you get beheaded. You know that kind of thing. And you know, and I was sad and talk about random. That 65-year-old man who was murdered in Los Angeles soon after the October 7th event really sad me. You know, I've been to Los Angeles in years. I never met the guy. But that and a president of a synagogue in Detroit was killed at her home soon after October 7th, too. Although they said that may have not have been related to the thing, but it's so coincidental. It's just too hard to believe. But yeah, your life can change in a dime. I mean, death or destruction or your life changing. But how do you respond to it? How do you bounce back? That's one of the big messages in the book is that how do you bounce back from all of that and still be tough and still be productive in society and wield a smile and be jovial and jolly and happy with what you do. And it's amazing. I don't know how these people do it. And so it
So
makes me
what do
feel
you
even luckier. It makes me feel more fortunate.
mm,
And in a way, it makes me feel soft because, like I said, I don't know how I would survive that. I don't know how most of us could, but it also makes me feel fortunate. And you know, and the more we talk about it, the more that's the case. So
put it all in
just
perspective? So, what do you personally want the world to know about racism, getting along, appreciating each other's cultures, etc.?
well, we've kind of covered it, but yeah, just sit back. I was just I just did a I was watching a movie with a group of people that are Holocaust educators about music and the Holocaust, and we were talking about how do you educate people, and one of the ways is to get people to go to other people's places of worship. So
Mm-hmm.
in your case, you know, you do field trips. On a Saturday morning, you take all the kids to a synagogue. On a Friday or on another day, you take them to a mosque.
Mm-hmm.
Take them to. I mean, that takes a lot of money. Take them to Israel. You know, they always say every Jewish person should visit Israel. I say everybody should visit Israel. I was there last year. Never felt safer. Didn't want to come home, and that's the beautiful sunny Florida.
I
And I
visited
felt this. I
Israel.
felt this. I felt this togetherness. This and
Mm-hmm.
Muslims and Jewish together. I never thought I never we're in a Muslim neighborhood, we're in a Jewish neighborhood. It didn't matter. I felt safe. I felt integrated, and it felt it was just wonderful. I mean, there's like
You know,
we're back.
just before the world closed down with COVID, I went to Israel and Dubai and made it back in the country just before all the
Lucky you.
lockdowns.
Lucky you, and good for you. I mean, I'd love to go to Dubai. That's low on. It's on the bucket list. It's not high on the bucket list, but it would be that good for you. What did you love Israel? I mean, isn't that an
I
amazing trip?
did. I want
It's
to
just so
obviously go back again. Yeah.
in a heartbeat. In fact, I'd even live there. I have cousins that still live in Jerusalem. My cousin, the last survivor, Susie, last survivor in my book, just passed away a couple of weeks after the war started in October. So she was in a coma for most of that time because she had renal failure for a long time. But at least she didn't have to deal with and hear about all the crap that was going on in her own country. So I don't think they feel threatened in Jerusalem necessarily, but I'm sure when the war first broke out and they were talking about Iran coming in and Hezbollah and everybody else, a little scary. Israel's a small country, but they rallied around it, and you know that's so I'm glad to see. But that's that kind of thing. Teaching people about tolerance is the way to do it. Educating. I'll do hundreds of these if I have to. If I get the message, if I get it to one person, if we sell one book and they invite me to do a book presentation, or they write me on social media and say, "Boy, this book's great. It really changed my viewpoint." That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So I can't do it by myself. I need people like you and the next podcast and the last one, the people that care.
Yeah.
It's got to be people that care, and you know, if you don't
Well,
care, you don't care.
let me ask you this: if we've had a very diverse and meaningful conversation, we even managed to have a little laugh here or there, but at the end of it, say the audience listens to our whole conversation so far, and they forget everything we said so far. What's the one gem you really want them to hold on to?
Well, you said you've been impoverished. My dad, same thing. My mom, same thing. They went from well off to impoverished to well off. An arc. They battled. So, I mean, I have so many. I got 50 messages. But if you're going through a hard time, get help if you can. Get help. Don't do it alone. That's like when my mom died. I got help. You know, we tend to be stubborn. We want to be self-sufficient. Get help. Love your neighbor. I don't want to sound corny. Love your neighbor.
Oh,
Talk to your
I agree.
neighbor. Understand your neighbor. Ask them how they're doing. Ask them what they're doing, how their kids are.
Hmm.
Be determined. Be determined to be successful.
Hmm.
If you're bored, do something different. Change vectors.
Yeah.
Pivot. Do something else. Write a book. Read a book.
Hmm.
Go for a walk. Go to the gym. Like I said, do something different. Determination, integrity is a big message, and integrity is important. If you don't have integrity, if you're not telling the truth all the time, if you're
Hmm.
forgetting about lie after lie, if
Hmm.
you're a bad business person and you're making bad deals, you're not in my corner. I mean, I don't know where that's coming from, but people that attack people, malfeasance. How about social media hackers, people that are hacking passwords and bank accounts?
Hmm.
What? There are more people trying to rob from us
I know.
than there are trying to get a real job, and that is just
Crazy.
why do I have 100 passwords? Why do I have to have 200 passwords? It's so ridiculous
Yeah.
because people are trying to steal from me. And why am I fighting anti-Semitism in that when people are still out there trying to rip each other off? And like, stop it already. Stop.
Yeah.
Be a part of society. Contribute. Do something. The whole world will be a better place, one person at a time.
I don't know why at this
Samuel
moment
Jackson,
a quote
uh,
from Rodney King is coming to my mind. Can't we just all get along?
Rodney King, poor guy. I mean, poor guy. Lucky to survive and talk about PTSD. I mean, but yeah, very sad. And listen to people like MLK. MLK is a hero of mine. Malcolm X. These names come up. You don't hear them every day. Mahatma Gandhi, Moses. These people, Margaret Thatcher, and on and on. These people don't get talked about enough, and they're not followed enough. We're going down these rabbit holes on these
Yeah.
some of these crazy speeches and statements and all this noise, all this electronic noise on social media and elsewhere
Yeah.
that it's time to stop it. Like, focus on what's important. Focus on the truth.
Mhm.
I guess that's the best line for me there's the truth and there's everything else. There's
And we
history.
need more critical thinking. Don't just
Critical thinking is a
believe
great way.
everything you hear.
Yes.
Take it through some
Yes.
kind of litmus test.
Exactly. I agree. I couldn't agree more. It's sit back, educate yourself, look up the facts, and then make a decision. And try not to make it a violent one. Leave that the violence to our military. Let our military defend us. The
Yeah.
difference between what we have here and what they had in Hungary is that the cops and the military were against you. You were Jewish, you're screwed. They were against you. But here, at least, no matter who's at the top, no matter if we hate our governor, our president, our mayor, or whatever, which I don't hate anybody, I just don't necessarily agree with them. And in some cases, they're just too old, in my opinion. But as long as I have a government and police and a military that protects me and you, then I can live here and live with it. But the day
Well,
that
I do
changes,
have to say, because consistent with my experience and some of my family, we have had situations where cops were not working for us.
it's
I
never
think
perfect.
I
Yeah,
think overall, um, I want to say most people's hearts in the right place, but it is real that even I have experienced unfair
it's very
treatment.
sad. I'm sorry to hear that too, because there's always going to be a few bad apples, no matter what. Going
Yeah,
back to the dragnets back in the day, there's always going to be. It's
right,
like I said, one guy ruins it for everybody. Back in the days
right.
of Serpico and Dragnet and those stories about all these corrupt cops and
Mhm.
and just how easy it is and all about money. Why is money is way down the list for me. For me, it's God, family, country, and then sports, bleep, and music. Now, sports, food, music, and and of course, fighting anti-Semitism in my book, which is all part of God, family, country. So, but money and career, I mean, that's been down the list for a long time. I mean, I'm happy to be a radiologist and working and kind of still hanging on to what I do, but it's not high up my priority list. This is way more
So
important.
here we are at the close of our interview today, and it's been a very delightful conversation. I'm very happy to share the ideals that you've expressed and the way in which you've expressed it. Um, and so this is an opportunity for you now to share with the audience how they can stay in touch with you, how they can get your book, anything you'd like them to know along those lines.
Well, I'm proud to say that. Well, here's my book. It's called Not a Real Enemy. I know you're going to show it, but it's won 4 awards, which
Thank
I'm
you.
proud to say. I don't even know what to do with that. I can thank my publishers, Amsterdam Publishers, my co-author Janice Harper, wonderful book coach, wonderful writer. She really turned the book into something special. I still don't know what to do with that, other than say I'm glad that important people that are in the know, appreciate good work, good quality work, and the importance of our work. So we'll say that. The book is an adventure, of course. It's a biography about my dad. It's a history about Hungary from World War I to the end of the Hungarian Revolution, which not a lot of people know about. We know American history sometimes, or British or whatever, but not. You can reach me by robertjwolfmd.com. Robert J. Wolf, no E. robertjwolfmd.com is my website. It's packed with videos, and I've done a lot of TV and radio interviews and podcasts, more coming, hopefully. It's got other information about the Hungarian Revolution and some about World War II. I got help with that. My guy, Mark, he's
Is it
great with the
also available at
website.
Barnes and Noble
So that's how you can
and
do it.
Amazon?
The book is available at Barnes and Noble. You can get it online or go to the store and ask. It's at Amazon, Walmart. You can get it at Walmart.
Okay.
Amazon is usually the most commonly used, but it's also on sale at the Tufts University Bookstore. I'm proud to say that's my alma mater. The United States Holocaust Museum in DC and the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center, where I did a book presentation last year, which was a fantastic experience. I'm on LinkedIn, Robert J. Wolf, MD. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Meta, whatever you call it now. I'm on X, Twitter, all over the place. Robert J. Wolf. If you Google Robert J. Wolf, MD, or if you Google Not a Real Enemy, you'll probably find me. I've got a lot of help with all of that. It's amazing what a team we've had. It's another big message too. It's all about the team. You gotta go with the team. It's not about yourself. Even if you're a golfer, it's about the team. You got a coach, you got a caddy.
So Robert, I'm so happy that you were willing to take time on a Saturday to join me and record this episode, that we can collaborate and share all this wonderful information and your parents' amazing story and the miracles and the things that they've overcome in really an unfair world. And we're all finding our way through all of this. But I like your message of togetherness, and I really hope that it resonates with the audience. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Pamela. I appreciate your time. And then thank you for your time on a Saturday, and keep up your good work with the kids. Keep educating them. And I'm not worried about your corner. But help me spread the word. We'll get the word out. More presentations, more podcasts. God bless you. Thank you so much.
God bless you too.